some of the systems that are in place are not fit for business needs today. What is needed is a quick ROI and real use cases that you can solve immediately. And it was clear that monthly financial close was that workflow. The company called Nivoda, a trader of diamonds with more than 13 entities, 130 bank accounts. They were spending more than 8 hours for journal entries. So we cut down this time to less than 10 minutes, reduce time for closing the books for 8 days. Just imagine that you can have a view into your financials and your data 8 days faster. Accountant will change as well because there'll be tools allowing to do a lot of work much easier. And what would really be an important skill for a finance person is...
Hi everyone, I'm Alex Schmitt and this is the Investment Memo, the show where founders reveal the stories behind their businesses and how they will shape the future of their industries. Today, I'm joined by Albert Malikov, founder and CEO of Stacks. Stacks is building an AI-first operating system for the office of the CFO, starting with accounting reconciliations and expanding toward a broader AI-native finance stack for the enterprise. Today, we'll talk about why the CFO function is ripe for disruption, how Stacks is approaching this problem differently than legacy vendors and point solutions, and what it takes to build foundational infrastructure in a highly competitive market. Albert, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Alex. Very excited to be here today.
You're announcing your Series A today, which is a big day for you, considering that you've only raised your seed around less than 12 months ago. Let's start with actually the outset, the market that you're building in. Why the CFO office is actually ripe for disruption. You know this because we've shared this with you. We've actually published a thought piece on the ERP supercycle and replacement layer. And there we're talking about the fact that the core ledger of the ERP is in some senses replaced, but in other places even more augmented by solutions that really actually do the work versus just support the work. Maybe level set us in this conversation a little bit. What's happening in the office of the CFO today?
There are three interesting trends colliding together. One, there is a transition of the finance function in being more strategic and driving intelligence and driving the business decisions forward. So this is first one. The second one, so what we're seeing, there's a huge shortage of CPAs, accountants in this space. The number of exams for CPAs in the last 10 years dropped by 40%, and US alone seeing a shortage of accountants in the amount of 300,000 people at the moment. This is the second trend. And then the third one, so there is a huge data fragmentation that is happening in the space. As you mentioned, with the unbundling the ERP itself, we're seeing a huge adoption of the point solution, which makes data being a big problem in this space. All of these trends together with the technological shift of the AI making this space very interesting for innovation.
So if I'm listening closely to you, what you're highlighting is basically there's massive labor shortage, but at the same point, data fragmentation. And so if we dive a little bit in the jobs to do, if you look at accounting, reconciliation, why is this all still so labor intensive, especially when you're in a lack of labor?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe just before going into the why, I'll explain a little bit what are the key workflows for the finance teams. One of the core ones is monthly financial close, which is the core, is job number one for every finance team. And it could be abstracted into three main steps. First, step number one is collecting the data and entering the data into the core system of the record, applying business logic and also accounting standards. Once it's done, once the data is in the main system of the record, the teams need to perform so-called reconciliation process, which is, in fact, is just verifying the data using the external data sources. Once the data is verified, accurate, it's all about telling the story and telling the so what on this data that is in the systems. So usually the company is doing this every month. This is best practice. If we think about this workflow, conceptually, It's the data problem. If we look back in time, the businesses were different. The complexity of the businesses were different. So they were very much manufacturing-driven businesses, where the systems of the record ERPs were very monolithic, where most of the supply chain and other parts of the operational functions of the companies were in one system. So you go to the dealership, buy BMW, then systems transactions trickling down to suppliers, eventually just comes back to the ERP, everything integrated in one place. And then while the companies were integrating the ERP, they were using the integrators and putting the automation with the if-else code logic in place. So what happened in the past couple of decades, businesses changed, businesses became global, more complex, more global. And so it changed the core systems. Companies started implementing a lot of point solution, best of the breed solution for the different parts, for the supply chain, for expenses, for payrolls, etc. And so what we started seeing is that there was this fragmentation of data. And so a lot of this if-else logic moved into the most flexible and customizable tool that we have on the planet, which is Excel.
Excel, yeah.
And what we're having today is a lot of this logic lives in Excel spreadsheets with a lot of labor on top of that to manipulate this data and eventually close the books.
I think what's interesting, what you're highlighting there, is that these businesses are becoming so much more complex, yet kind of the finance function is still very much running on Excel. When we spoke to a couple of, potential customers in the industry while getting to know you better, we found it so crazy that some of these customers aren't even able to close month end anymore. And that obviously gives you no visibility into your processes, no planning security. You don't even have to talk about a finance function that can be a value partner if you're not even able to deliver on the core premises of what you're set out to do.
It's pretty insane to think about that, in the world where we have such a powerful tools, so powerful technology, a lot of companies cannot even have a full visibility of the past, not to speak about the future.
Yeah, it sounds like a perfect storm. Why hasn't kind of agentic AI arrived to that function yet in a bigger fashion?
It's actually interesting. We've been talking with you a little bit about that as well. If we look at the other industries where we see AI penetrating much faster, like legal, customer support, I think there are a couple of differences there. First is on the data side of the things, and then second is on the context. The data structures of the finance teams are a lot more complex than in legal. First of all, in legal, it's very text-based, and also very much consolidated in one place, as opposed to finance, where data is fragmented and it's also numerical data. That's one. And then second is the context. The context allowing to teach this agentic systems so they can learn and become smarter. Again, in the finance world, the context right now is very fragmented. It doesn't live anymore in the ERPs because teams are doing the work in multiple different systems, including Excel, Slack, emails, and many, many other tools. So there's a fragmentation of the context, not allowing to really sort of bring it together and learn from that. All of this makes the penetration of the automation much harder in the finance world. But at the same time, for those who will solve these fundamental problems in this space, there's incredible opportunity because the space is massive and the impact that you can make is huge.
I guess it's a great segue to talk a little bit about the role of the ERPs in this whole new world that you're describing. ERPs used to be the core tool that CFOs were paying for. It used to be the tool that was the biggest spend that they were actually having. Everybody was talking about this is the single source of truth, the core ledger that you're having. What is the role of an ERP in this new world?
As I already mentioned, what we've seen is that a lot of context, a lot of work moved away from the ERPs today. But ERPs are still a very powerful source of the record within the companies. So basically, again, just building a lot of automation that data that is within the ERPs is incredibly important, but then the context that is on top of that data is incredibly important as well. So in order to build a system that is truly making change and delivering ROI for the customers, one has to bring together context, where the people doing the work, and the data together. You mentioned this in one of our conversations as well, some surveys with the CIOs that there's increased trend of finance teams thinking about upgrading their systems. And I think it's truly signaling that some of the systems that are in place are not fit for business needs today. But at the same time, what we're hearing and seeing in the big enterprises, changing those systems is very difficult. As someone was saying, is almost like doing a heart surgery on
open heart surgery,
and the athlete who's running on the track. And in many ways, so it's not needed. What is needed is a quick ROI and real use cases that you can solve immediately.
I love that analogy to doing an open heart surgery and then immediately after jumping on a treadmill to run on the track. Yeah, it's really great. I think it's really encouraging for CFO functions that they have to have obviously a great kind of core infrastructure on the ERP layer, but that they can drive a lot of the efficiency gains and the insights that they really want to do by building kind of around that core with a value-adding layer, such as Stacks, I guess, which is a good segue in talking a little bit about why we're sitting here today. And that is obviously you announcing your Series A investment round. And what makes me happy about this announcement today is that this is not the spur of a moment that we're sitting here, but we've actually gotten to know each other over 1.5 years pretty well. I very vividly remember our first day of having a walk in rainy, gray Berlin in a spring day. And then I very vividly also remember the moments that we spent outside of the office where we brought you to our kite trip that we together had. And there's a great picture of us in here that we can look later on as well. But maybe kind of taking us a little bit on the journey of Stacks. And I know, that company is still relatively young, but you kind of came from a very impressive background. You've built the core functionalities in Uber's finance teams. You've helped Plaid to land in Europe, and you saw these problems in the broader finance stack today. So Albert, help our viewers understand what was the vision for Stacks at that moment when we met, and how has that evolved into what Stacks is today?
I still remember our walk in Berlin when we were talking about the space. At that time, what we knew is, since I was a part of the Uber finance team, working as a product manager on automation side of the finance, so it was clear that this is a massive space. It was also clear that the problem and the manual mundane work in this space is very acute. And finally, we were living in this world of new technology emerging, that giving a hope that we can completely rethink some of the solutions there grounds up. So we had this longer term vision, but we didn't fully have a view on how we're going to get there and when we're going to start. Yeah, in the case of the Uber, we were building almost 60 businesses at the same time because every region was a business, and decision making was very decentralized. So we had GMs that had to do a lot of decisions, and they needed data on their fingertips, with a lot of this data coming from the financial data as well. At Uber, it was in a way solved by a very data-obsessed teams and with access to the data. But not every company can do that. And for us was really a North Star, how we can really bring all this finance teams in the world where they have financial intelligence at the fingertips, so that everyone in the company can make better decisions, whether they invest in one product, another product, they invest in one region or another region. But to get there, one thing we realized that it's fundamentally a data problem, because data is segregated, data is everywhere, and it's difficult to build intelligence without having a good data layer. But you cannot build that data layer from day one. And so we decided to go and talk to the customers, do research. We spoke to hundreds of customers across the world, to really understand how can we get there, what would be the best wedge through bringing efficiency, ROI, to the companies as quickly as possible. And it was clear that monthly financial close was that workflow that is very manual, where more than 60% of labor force is concentrated, and where AI can make a huge difference. So we decided to focus on this area, and interestingly, this area is also allowing us to get the view of the data more horizontally and really just get us closer to that vision. So focusing on very immediate ROI, we decided to start with this workflows related to the journal entries, reconciliations, and reporting, and then work our way into just making companies a lot more intelligent in their decision making.
What I found so impressive when I saw you embarking on that journey, and you mentioned that just very casually right now, is like you were obsessed about your customers. You had literally done more than 100 customer interviews at that time and really figuring out what is that best wedge in. And at the same time, you're very much focused on still doing the hard pieces, which is building the underlying infrastructure and data platform for Stacks. So describe, what does Stacks look today like, and how do customers use that product?
Yeah, absolutely. So our product is structured on three fundamental layers. One layer that I just mentioned, it's a data layer. We called it AI-ready parallel ledger. Second layer in our system is deterministic tools. It's machine learning tools such as transaction matching, categorization, and other different data analysis tools. So finance is a space which is very sensitive to the accuracy. So that's why we're using this deterministic tools, where we're doing the math. And then you
have to be right about that, actually. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then the third layer here is our workflows. We call them agents. The agents orchestrating the workflows. This is the interesting part, because what we've seen at Uber is that a lot of workflows are not linear, and you can automate 95% of some of the reconciliations, but then a lot of time is spent on that last mile, and last mile is really less deterministic. Depending on the exceptions, you might actually want to trigger different workflow, and that's where agents are very powerful, because they learn from the context. They learn seeing how accountants doing the exception handling, and based on that learnings, they can start different workflows. So those are fundamentally three layers that allowing us to achieve much better automation and also accuracy with our product.
I think Stacks will stand as a playbook example on how you actually use deterministic workflows together with generative AI tools to really bring value to a function where ultimately precision and reliability matters a lot. I'm curious to see and write that case study together one day. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in this space. Fortunately or unfortunately, you cannot just throw data at LLM and hope for the best. So that fundamentally foundational layers on the data side and then on deterministic machine learning tools are incredibly important. And the way we build this deterministic tools are very much AI first. They can be used by teams to complete the workflows in semi-automated way, or they can be used by agents that can do tool calling to execute workflows as well. So that system makes our platform unique, because it's learning over the time, and over the time we're pushing what's possible from automation to the new levels.
When I bring down your concepts of how you think about the product into real life examples, can you walk us through how customers are actually using the product and what impact that creates for that finance function?
Yes, absolutely. There are three most important parts of our workflow, of our product. The first one is, I would call it a journal entry, so like entering the data. And in the world before, take as an example payroll. You as a company using 5 different payroll providers, and teams were pulling together this data in Excel spreadsheets and then manipulating the data and creating a CSV files, entering into the ERP system. So we fully automated this workflow. So now you can do that with a few clicks in our system. So that's one. Second is reconciliations, and one good example there is a bank account reconciliations. Especially for the customers with the millions of the transactions. This could be a big Excel files with the VLOOKUP functions there that takes a lot of time. Yeah. And then finally, like once you have all of the data there, telling the story and understanding why the spend is 20% higher this month, understanding what actually drives that is something that requires a lot of work looking at the transactions. So with Stacks, we automated this process. Again, with a few clicks, you get the detailed transaction level explanation.
For your flux analysis.
For your variance and flux analysis, exactly. I think the good example here is the company called Nivoda. They are a trader of diamonds, incredibly international business with the more than 13 entities. 130 bank accounts.
Wow.
So when we started working with them, some of these processes were quite manual. What we were able to do together, so they were spending more than 8 hours for journal entries. So we cut down this time to less than 10 minutes together. They were spending a lot of time on reconciling this 130 bank accounts with the thousands, even more, hundreds of thousands of transactions there. 95% of this work is now fully automated. And so we're also rolling out our Flux product with them as well, and already seeing a huge reduction of the time spent on this. All in all of this allowed the Nivoda team to reduce time for closing the books for 8 days. Just imagine that you can have a view in your financials, in your data, 8 days faster.
That has real economic impact for the business, despite the fact that you finally can spend time on value-creating tasks versus these annoying tasks. That's a really great example. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the people at Stacks and the culture that you're building. In fact, I'm going to look at our memo and I'm going to highlight. We've written in the memo that we think you're an incredible product-driven team that strives for excellence. And that also means you ran without an engineering lead for almost all of the time at Stacks. Tell us a little bit about what are you looking for people that are joining Stacks, and what makes your culture so special that someone like us is describing it as a very high-density talent organization?
So I do not recommend running a team without engineering lead for as long as we did, but we had an incredibly high standard and bar for that person, so we didn't want to compromise. I'm very glad that we have this person already joining our team. I think in many ways the talent density comes from experiencing this in the different environments. For me, that was, again, during my times at the Uber, and there were a couple of things that really amazed me at Uber. First of all, it's ambition. Every time when I thought that I cannot be surprised by the ambition of the company, someone would come and just put it to the next level. Second is ownership. Everyone was an entrepreneur inside the company, and that's why what I'm seeing right now, a lot of people I work with, they started the companies that are quite successful around the world. And then the final thing is craft. So having high standard of the craft for roles such as whether it's design, engineering, was very important, and those things that really sort of, after seeing once, you don't want to compromise anymore. And for us specifically at Stacks, what we were looking in everyone who is joining, three main things. First is the motivation, because working in the early stage company requires a certain level of
drive and energy.
And you need to be in a way like a high achiever and just prove to the world that you want to do more.
Yeah.
So we asking the questions and trying to get the signals that the person joining the team been showing this before in the previous career. That's one. Second, already mentioned the craft, incredibly important. So especially for the roles such as engineering, design. Design is not just shiny interfaces. It's like, how do you think about UX? How do you break down the complex workflows into experiences that delight customers? And finally, it's analytical rigor and problem solving. In early stage company, we would like to have people who love solving the problems. When they solve 10 problems, they're looking for another 100 problems to solve. It's a little bit like mathematicians that cannot live without new problems coming in their way.
I love the talent density at Stax. A fun anecdote is also that you celebrate every new hire on LinkedIn, and somehow every new hire has an outdoor sports picture in that celebration. Is there a special story behind that? I'd love it if it's, our kite trip that inspired that, but tell us what's behind this.
Yeah, so it's something that organically started. Well, first of all, what we wanted to do is tell a little bit to the outside world about our team, outside of simply the work that we do. It just builds the trust with our customers as well. Just seeing that we have diverse people joining our team with diverse experiences, backgrounds, and the interest. Somehow, many of us like the outdoor activities. And there's a little bit of irony there because most of the time we spend in the office talking to the customers in front of our laptops. Probably it's a little bit of aspiration to spend more time doing outside of activities at some point in the life.
Okay, so the next, when I'm applying to Stax, I have to send you a picture on top of a mountain, and then maybe I'm going to make it through the recruitment process.
We already have fantastic picture together and just kiting together.
I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about this new capital stack that you've raised. Congrats again, by the way. At Lightspeed, we think it's a very exciting time because you're fundamentally rethinking how some of the deepest workflows are being done. And so it's time for exponential innovation instead of incremental innovation. And what you're doing here at Stax is pretty much that. And we're very thankful to be part of that journey, to be part of a broader team in this. You have an incredible set of partners already on the journey. How did you go about choosing your partners for this?
For us, it really came down to the three things. First, it was important for us to have a partner that has similar conviction in the space as we are. It's a long-term decision, and through our conversations and interactions with the firm, we saw that conviction. That's first. Second, we believe that this wave of innovation is very technology-driven. It's not just business model innovation. A lot of changes in the space happening deeply through the technology. As a part of getting to know the firm, we met more than 10 partners across the world. And every conversation made us believe that every partner is deeply technologist at the firm. And for us, it's very important because that's how we think about the space as well. And we never got so deep into the conversation with other firms out there. And then finally, it's very much building and having the trust with the people that you work closely with. And we known each other for more than 2 years for now and had a lot of touch points and conversation about this space that really built this trust. And I'm very excited to have you and Lightspeed on the board in this journey of building a generational company.
Excitement is equal, and we're very thankful to be part of it too. What does this new capital stack allow you to do now?
One thing that I'm very excited about is accelerating the product development. So we have a roadmap that's spanning 12, even more months, and we cannot wait to bring some of the products a lot faster to the market. We're living in incredible time when technology is changing so fast, and the speed of bringing products to the market is super important. So most of the investments will go into accelerating the speed, and many of our products also becoming more powerful as customers using them more. So we're investing into distribution to bringing this ROI, this innovation to more companies out there.
Yeah. I love that you're so ambitious. You wouldn't have needed the money right now. You actually had a lot of the money that you've raised still on your balance sheet. But I think doing this now really enables you to kind of really bring those products to the market that all these customers are actually pulling out of you. And so I'm excited that we are hopefully transforming this finance function even quicker now. Tell us, what does success mean for you at Stacks? How does the finance function in 5 years look like if you've succeeded?
One conversation that stood out to me when we were doing research, even before starting the company, a controller at a global company told us that their team spending 80% of the time doing different data manipulations and only 20% of the time looking into the data and looking into the insights. So when we were thinking about the future and success, for us is just flipping that equation, really just giving time back for the teams to focus on what really drives the business forward. What does that mean in terms of how the teams might look like? If we look at the enterprise company with 10,000 employees, usually you would have around 200 finance professionals there, with 50 to 60% involved in accounting workflows that are incredibly manual. And then the rest of the team is focusing on multiple other functions, including FP&A. I think in the future, the composition of the teams will change, and the teams becoming more strategic, and a lot of this manual work will be automated, and team members will be spending their time on value-added work, the work that drives the business forward. But also that would mean that the skill gaps and segregation that we're seeing right now, FP&A person is very different to accountant, will change as well, because there'll be tools allowing to do a lot of work much easier. And what would really be an important skill for a finance person is really intuition around numbers, intuition around how to use these numbers to drive the business forward. So I'm very excited about this future, because I think we're living in this transformational time.
Yeah, I think there couldn't be any better closing words. I'm very thankful that we're going on this journey together. Thank you very much for being here today, Albert, and excited for the partnership to come and how we're transforming the CFO suite, and by accident building one of the biggest and best businesses out there over time. Thank you for being on the show. It was great having you. I think we should shake hands that you're going to sponsor the next kite trip when you build a $10 billion company. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks for having me.